Hello everyone, this is Darcinovia here. After what's been happening for the past month or so, I want to do something fun. I haven't done a Jedi's Cantina in a while, so why not do one? Now, this episode, like I said a while ago, is going to be about Revan. How to bring Revan into the new canon, and how to make Revan work. Now, for the sake of this video, I will be referring to Revan in gender-neutral terms. I'll explain why in a bit. Why I would do this. The reason I would refer to Revan, at least I'm going to refer to Revan in gender-neutral terms, is because what made Revan a popular character in the early 2000s was the fact that Revan had no canon gender. Revan is whoever you wanted them to be. Did you see Revan as a woman? Well, then Revan was a woman. Was Revan a man? You saw Revan as a man. Was Revan, a psychotic, murdering Sith Lord? Well, that was Revan. And in my opinion, Revan was their most interesting when there was no canon gender for the character. And that is why Revan was as popular as they were. Revan was more than some cool-looking, character and cool-looking armor like, you see nowadays in fan art with Revan in that iconic Mandalorian armor that every fan of the expanded universe is familiar with. Now, I'm going to bring up another character that is popular, and they're one of the most popular characters in gaming. That is Commander Shepard. Now, I'm not going to refer to Shepard as any sort of gender, because you may see Shepard differently than I do. Example, for me, I see Shepard, to me, her is female. Shepard canon background is she was a colonist and she's sole survivor. And her canon love interest is Garrus. And Shepard is mostly Paragon with some Renegade. 40% Renegade, 60% Paragon. That's Commander Shepard to me. Now, I don't want my Shepard to be forced on everyone else. Other people would disagree. They probably would see Shepard as male, and Shepard's canon love interest is either Liara or Tali or Ashley, or hell, maybe Shepard is gay in their eyes. What I'm getting at is Shepard, in my opinion, is a more interesting character because Shepard, at this point, does not have a canon gender. Shepard is who you want to be. And I think Shepard, in my opinion, is one of the best role-playing characters of all time. Because in the lore, and I'm just, as someone that's dived into the Mass Effect expanded universe, not too much, but every time Shepard is ever mentioned, Shepard is not mentioned by their first name, their background, or their gender. They're just referred as Commander Shepard. They make Shepard as gender neutral as possible because there's a lot of fans that see Shepard in different ways. And honestly, I'm alright with that. As long as BioWare keeps Shepard's, canon, gender, name, background completely up to the player, I will, continue to love this character as much as I have. Shepard is, in my opinion, one of the best, video game characters in gaming because Shepard is your character. You decide what Shepard is. Personality, backstory, love interests. Why am I bringing this up? When Knights of the Old Republic came out in 2003, this was one of BioWare's earlier games. there wasn't as many options in terms of personalities for Revan. There was no voice for Revan, and not to mention the love interest you had for Revan was Karf, Juhani, which you actually had to play female Revan to get that in Karf, which you also had to play female. That's it. You didn't really have that many romance options in the first Knights of the Old Republic for Revan. And, in my opinion, considering that Revan, as of right now, the only thing that's canon about Revan is the name, I actually think Revan, the only thing that should be canon is the name. In my opinion, a new Revan story should be told in video games and video games only. No movies, no TV shows, video games only. If they want to do new stories of their own version of the Old Republic without, Revan, that's okay. Because in my opinion, Revan should never be a character from a TV show or a movie. Because honestly, Revan was one of my favorite Star Wars characters before I dove deeper into the EU. And when Revan's gender was canonized, Revan lost everything that made the character unique to me. Revan was no longer interesting. And I could say the same for Mitra. I saw Mitra's canon gender as male, not female. But that's a different topic altogether. Because the story of Knights of the Old Republic 2, if you played it, especially with the restored content mod, it feels like the game intended for the exile to be a male. And canonizing the exile as female just didn't make any sense from a lore standpoint. But that's a different topic altogether. Now, how would this work? If they referenced Revan, how would this work? Again, if Revan's ever mentioned in any canon source, like a TV show, a comic, or another video game that mentions Revan, or a book, mention Revan in gender-neutral terms. And if there is a contradiction, they do have a gender for Revan, they could just basically there's retcons they could say that, it's said that so many thousands of years in the past that Revan's gender is completely unknown. And I think that's how it should have remained in Legends. But due to the MMO and the Revan novel, it is impossible, unless you basically just headcanon and say, no, these things don't count. Revan is canonically male, and Revan's canonically light side. All of Revan's choices, your choices, are light side. That's the problem with the character of Revan. And honestly, I personally think Lucasfilm shouldn't be so concerned with canon when they're telling a new story with the character of Revan. Because Revan is not Thrawn. Revan is not like other characters. Revan is essentially you. And the only way to make Revan into an actual character is essentially to have Revan have their own set personality and vice versa. And I just don't think that should be done. Revan is a video game character. And I just don't think reimagining Revan in any other format will be faithful to the character. Because Revan, there isn't much of a character with Revan until SWTOR. And even then, Revan is barely a character in that novel. And before, SWTOR, and before Revan had a canon gender, there's so many different interpretations of the character of Revan that before Revan's canon gender was finalized, most interpretations of Revan were valid. And I think that's how they need to approach the character of Revan. Revan shouldn't be male or female. Revan's gender should be up to the player. But then again, it's like, oh, how are you going to tell a new story with Revan if it's only in a video game? Star Wars has yet to tap to the full potential of video games. Yes, it has great stories with KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2. But let's be real, there isn't that many Star Wars games that you could say have great stories. You have Star Wars games that are fun to play from a gameplay standpoint, such as Jedi Academy and Battlefront, but do you really have a Star Wars game that has a great story? I cannot name that many outside of KOTOR, KOTOR 2. And I know some people will be like, what about The Force Unleashed? You can actually experience The Force Unleashed both games without ever playing the video game. The novel is the real story. So, KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2 are like one of the few Star Wars stories that have actually been really good in video game form. And I don't think Star Wars has fully taken advantage of the full potential that, a great Star Wars video game story could have. Because games were more about the gameplay. Yeah, I'm not saying that Jedi Academy or Jedi Outcast or Dark Forces don't have a story, but the early Star Wars games, there was not that many cutscenes. And you were mostly just playing through the levels. They weren't story driven. You could ignore the story and just play it strictly for the gameplay. Knights of the Old Republic wasn't like that. Neither was the second game. You were able to immerse yourself into, the story. In fact, there's only like 5 Star Wars games I can think of that are story driven. Knights of the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic 2, both Force Unleashed games, and Jedi Fallen Order. There aren't that many. And with the kind of technology we have now with video games, I believe we could do a better story with a reimagining of Knights of the Old Republic. And I know some people are like, what are you talking about, Darcinovia? They're just going to add a bunch of woke shit in there. Well, here's the thing. If this is an RPG, and you can choose what you want Revan to be, would Revan being gay really be woke? Because you could choose to ignore, that romance option and just play as a heterosexual Revan. Or you could just play as a non-binary Revan, or it just doesn't matter. You can play Revan however you want. I'm all about player freedom. And in my opinion, they should structure Revan's story arc as a trilogy. Just like Commander Shepard's story arc. Now, how would they do this? If I were in charge of a reimagining of Knights of the Old Republic, this is how I would approach it. Since Legends never actually gave us the Mandalorian Wars from Revan's perspective, why not actually have a Star Wars game that takes place during the Mandalorian Wars and you play as Revan? Throughout the entire game, your choices affect how certain battles play out and how characters will react to you in future games. And hey, here's a radical idea. Since BioWare's games have more love interests as, the games progressed, why not have, instead of having like 2 love interests, why not have multiple? Hell, have Malik be a love interest if you wish. If you want to, make Malik an option. Yeah, I would say make Malik a romance option. So it actually you could have special dialogue and their final confrontation on the Starforge in the sequel. I know that what I'm talking about is crazy and ridiculous, but the whole purpose is to tell a new story with Revan, not rehashing the old one. And using, what we know from the Mass Effect trilogy, the original, at the end of the first Knights of the Old Republic, the new trilogy, Revan and Malak discover that there's a Sith Empire out there. And we could actually have the sequel take place a few years afterwards where Revan and Malak, at least at first, go to war with the Republic to unite it against the Sith. Now, depending on your actions in the first game, will determine how characters will react to Revan, or how Revan was. Like if Revan's fall to the dark side was a shock or wasn't a shock. This way, it would actually make things interesting. Of course, the second game could be a retelling of the first game, and you know what? Let's just dive deeper into this world. Could we introduce new characters? Yeah, we could introduce old ones. I cannot tell you what I would do to basically retell the entire story of Knights of the Old Republic. But you know what? I say let's just tell a brand new story, and with some parts of the old one, mixed in. This could be a reimagining and a remake at the same time. Now, the final game of the trilogy would be Revan actually going to war with the Sith. And depending on your actions, and the last two games will determine, how much support you'll gain from the galaxy. And yeah, I know I'm using Mass Effect as an example. Then again, I'm playing through the Mass Effect trilogy, the Legendary Edition, and I cannot help but see the full potential of a Knights of the Old Republic reimagining. Not a remake, a reimagining. Telling a brand new story with Revan without making Revan's gender canonized. Because that's the key. Make Revan's gender, background, morality, love interest, make that completely up to the player. And as for EU authors who want to tell stories in this era, this will not restrict them at all. There's so much things they can do in this era. If they want to tell new stories in the Old Republic era, in their own version of it. There's nothing to hold them back. What would hold them back is imagination, competence. If BioWare could, work with authors who write for the Mass Effect expanded universe, if they can, not mention who Shepard's gender is, love interest, background, they could do this. They could fucking do it, with Revan if they wanted to tell a new story. But this is my opinion. Revan should not be in a TV show or a movie. Revan is a video game character at heart, and Revan should stay there. In my opinion, that is the best way we can bring Revan back and breathe new life into this character. This way, people can choose however they want to make Revan however they want and see Revan however they want. But unfortunately, my idea will never happen because, Disney doesn't actually see how much money the gaming industry, makes. And not to mention, you have a lot of casual Star Wars fans that don't want to play video games. I think Knights of the Old Republic is a video game series and it should stay that way. But what can I say? I'm just a guy on the internet. Anyway, this concludes this, edition of Jedi's Cantina. I know it's a little shorter than usual, but hey, it's better to end something on a high note than to continue to go on and bore the audience. Peace out, everyone. May the Force be with you, and stay safe.